Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy. Hi, I'm Tony Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. We are going to be talking to Jennifer Jones Austin. You all know her as a Brooklyn Savvy regular, and you know that she's very much involved in everything related to social justice. And she is chair of the New York City Racial Justice Commission, and she's doing some great work dismantling some of this embedded racism that is structural and that is within our charter. But before we get started, let me introduce who's in the Savvy panel room. We have Dr. Maria de Longoria, Phyllis Whitethorn, and Toby Stein. Now, I just want to read my little intro. I have racial inequity and discrimination are baked into institutions and society, but our past and where we are today need not be the story of our future. So talk to us about the work, the overall work of the New York City Racial Justice Commission, Jennifer. And first of all, really glad you're sitting in that spot. So happy, so happy.
I so much appreciate you, and I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about the Racial Justice Commission. I've been working in the space of fighting poverty for better than 25 years now, and I've had some very rewarding and enriching experiences over the course of my career. I will tell you that this is probably by far the greatest experience thus far in terms of really getting at the roots of poverty and inequity in our society, appreciating that it is all tied, or in large measure, to capitalism and racism as a construct, to a tool to essentially perpetuate a capitalist society where some people have and some people do not. The Racial Justice Commission was created just 7, 8 months ago in March of 2021 by Mayor Bill de Blasio to examine the New York City Charter, which is the New York City Constitution, to identify the laws and the provisions in the charter that perpetuate racism by design, by implementation, or by impact, and to go into the charter and to uproot those provisions, those laws, and to replace them or to add additional laws that begin to dismantle structural racism and replace it with those tools, those laws, those provisions that will enhance and further equity.
Is everyone ready for this kind of work?
No. No, no, no. And let me just, put it to you this way. I was sharing with a former colleague, someone who's now a friend, the work that we're doing because we're centering on some very critical issues. We're centering on the perennial marginalization, the explicit acts to marginalize and continually oppress people of color, how our agencies, how our systems allow for that. We're looking at, how wages are established in New York City and what drives wages, what drives pay inequity. All of this has impact. Essentially, what these changes would do, if they're acted upon, is begin to level the playing field, to take privilege and opportunity, power, and access from, what has been the white privileged class of our society and redistribute it. So many people aren't ready. Some people have actually said to me, this person I was talking to, she said, you could fail. And I looked at her and I said, no, if we do the work that is necessary, we will succeed. But if New York City, the electorate, do not vote on these measures because the New York City community will have to vote on them. If you all don't vote and approve them, then you all will fail.
I had someone say at a meeting I was at, well, my friends don't want to hear anything about any kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I said to myself, is this where we really are? Is this where things will start for us? So, how do we go about changing the minds of people who see this as something that they have to lose, that there's something in this that they have to lose? How do we talk about it in a way where a rising tide lifts all boats? Or is there a way to talk about it that way?
It's very hard. It's really, really hard, because we live in a society where we have been led to believe that there is but so much opportunity, so much, income, so many resources, but so many resources to go around. And so we've been led to believe, and this is, I think this is all part of this racial construct and this system that we're living in, where we've been forced to believe that in order for some people to have, others cannot have. And that if we're going to level the playing field, then it's going to take something from others. But a lot of the research is showing that if we did not, deprive certain people based on race and color of basic opportunities, basic goods and resources, basic say in how their communities are structured, basic, say in like healthcare systems and how they can benefit from them. The list goes on and on. If we didn't deprive people, then everybody would be able to like contribute and and add to our society, and that our economy might actually grow. We may be in a better place, but we're buying into these false narratives that really haven't borne out. So we have to change the narrative. We have to help people to understand and see what this really looks like. Like there's a lot of talk right now about critical race theory. What I tell people all the time is that the Racial Justice Commission is actually doing critical race theory. It's like critical race theory in action. We're looking at these structural laws that have kept people from getting ahead, and we're dismantling those laws and putting in place new laws and provisions that will create greater shared opportunity.
So, how is the community engaged in this? Because
Mm.
to change the charter, it has to be through a ballot, right? Ballots.
Yep.
Most people, or I would imagine a lot of people, when it comes to voting on ballots, most of us might not even know what's in the ballot.
Mm.
Those kinds of things. So, can you talk to us about what your outreach strategy is going to be so that people are actually interested and know what it is they're voting on?
Absolutely. So the commission was created in March of 2021. It's a 2-year commission. The plan is for the commission, which is comprised of 11 members who represent and reflect the New York City diaspora, to decide upon proposals that will move forward as ballot measures. We're going to make those decisions by the end of this year, by the end of 2021. And then the work of engaging the New York City electorate at large in understanding what these ballot measures would do if voted on and approved in November of 2022. That's where the work begins in real earnest. Now, what we have been doing up until this point is going into the communities, particularly and especially those communities where people who've been marginalized and oppressed by existing structural racism and government structures that perpetuate it. We've been going into these communities and talking with people about their lived experiences. We've been talking about what it means to be denied access to basic goods and services, what it means for certain institutions like institutions that promote pollutants in the air to be oversighted in your community, what it means to have language or your race just simply be a barrier to accessing those opportunities that others are easily able to avail themselves of. What does that look like? Building then proposals based on what we're hearing from them and from other thought leaders and experts around the country, building those proposals. And then we're going to vote on them. And then next year, we've got to do the public outreach and education and engagement to help people understand how these measures will benefit them and how everybody needs to vote on them favorably come November 2022. So some outreach now, but it's going to be enhanced because everybody's got to know about the Racial Justice Commission's work in the next year.
So I'm going to open it up to the savvy panelistas for some questions. Toby, do you have? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, I am so thrilled you're on this commission.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know that you are going to cut through all of these racist systems with the commission and make for a better society. So I wanted to know, Jennifer, what drives your personal commitment to racial justice?
So for me, it probably begins, this is going to sound kind of, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to be vulnerable.
Sure.
So I grew up in a household with a civil rights leader who very early on in our lives, I mean, I can't even remember a time when we weren't talking about race and race matters at the table. And you can look at me and see that I'm a light complexioned person of color, African American. My parents helped me to appreciate very early on that no matter my complexion, black is black is black is black. But what I came to understand very early in life was that even being a black person, you know, I had some advantages over my darker complexioned brothers and sisters, and that didn't sit right with me because black is black is black is black. And so it actually for me wasn't necessarily that I'd experienced outright racism in a way that I could touch it and feel it very early on, but I saw it. I saw it playing out with my brothers and sisters of a darker hue than me. And I knew that that wasn't right. And I think that's what kind of sparked it in me. And just seeing, like, you know, the inequities visited upon people of color, and then how it sometimes seems to deepen, or at least it feels like it does when you're of a darker hue.
I wanted you to talk a bit about the 6 patterns of equity, and if you could elaborate on those. Now there are 6, but I think we're doing this particular show because this is the beginning of helping to educate people on what it is the Racial Justice Commission is doing. So if you could talk about those 6 patterns. Mm-hmm.
So when we reached out to the community, we heard a lot from them about the challenges, the lived experience and the challenges that brought. And we took what we heard from them, and we tried to essentially organize and categorize it so that we could begin to tackle it. And what we heard were, you know, these very 6 categories of inequities boiling up. The first was inequity in quality services. So, you know, you go from a community of color where there is a lack of quality health care. You take Mott Haven, Bronx, for example. The hospitals in Mott Haven, where the residents are predominantly Latino, Latinx, and African American. Mott Haven has the worst hospitals in the nation, but if you just go on a 14-minute ride into the Upper East Side, subway ride, 4 of the best hospitals in the nation. So they talked to us about inequity in quality services, education being another example. They talked to us about inequity in work, advancement, and wealth building. And everything from wage suppression to occupational segregation to pay inequity, how Black women are paid 62 cents on the dollar compared to white men. And then how all of this, you know, serves to perpetuate poverty, with 1 in 4 Black children living in poverty compared to less than 1 in 10 white children. They talked to us about inequity within and across neighborhoods that inhibit people from advancing. They talked about inequities in parks and recreation, pollutants in the community, that you know, some things that you'll find in the Bronx or in Brooklyn that you don't see in more affluent communities. Again, like, you know, not even having, like, you know, sidewalks.